ESO's Quarter 4 DLC, Deadlands, is now out on the PC servers. Listen, I haven't finished talking to my therapist about the trauma that I experienced in Cyrodiil from last patch's new gear additions. And you're telling me that there's already a new patch? Oh my. In this video, I'll be quickly going over some new ways to make gold in ESO Deadlands. Now, fair warning, a vast majority of these new gold earning endeavors require that you own the Deadlands DLC, seeing as the items are coming directly from locations that are a part of this new content. But there are some other changes that have been made in this patch that affect the base game, which is accessible by all players. Although, to be fair, the Deadlands DLC was basically thrown at us for free during that one Pathfinder event, if you were around for that. Without further ado, let's get into it. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm a fan of being able to play the game and make gold on the side, so I appreciate it whenever I get to do something fun and make some bank while I'm at it. I find that the following change complements this notion. If you ever see that the Imperial City Prison or White Gold Tower dungeons are the daily pledges, I highly recommend that you do them as it is. I personally find them to be pretty fun dungeons. They're relatively easy to complete, the gear that drops from them ain't half bad at all, and you also get key fragments in these dungeons, which can be sold for a fair amount of gold if you have no use for them yourself. If that wasn't reason enough to venture into these dungeons, maybe this additional change can help persuade you. The heavy sacks in ICP and White Gold Tower now have a chance to drop Hexos. Y'all think I'm bad by pronouncing this Bugloss instead of Bugloss? Christopher ESO, well, I guess he's Christopher New World now, used to pronounce this runestone Hacky Joe, okay? At least I'm not that bad. This prismatic runestone is fairly valuable, and likewise fairly expensive, seeing as it can be used to craft prismatic glyphs, which allow you to have tri-stats on your gear. This is particularly important and commonly used in PvP builds. Hexos are also hard to come by, especially if you aren't an average PvP enjoyer. You can purchase them for 5,000 Talvar at the IC vendors, and they have a rare chance to drop from the mobs in the Imperial City. The low supply and high demand of Hexos has made them a reliably valuable material. While I'm sure that we'll likely have to sacrifice our newborn children to RNGs in order to get a Hexos to drop from these heavy sacks, I'm personally looking forward to having another reason to run these Imperial City dungeons whenever they're pledges. I'd recommend installing the Harvest Map add-on or checking out Alcast's guide on these dungeons to get an idea for where all the heavy sacks have a chance to spawn. Let's talk about some of the Deadlands exclusive stuff. A general rule to keep in mind is that new items sell much more reliably and for much more gold as soon as they're added to the game in light of all the hype that surrounds them, and in light of the lack of supply, seeing as they are new items after all. The market hasn't had a chance to be saturated with them yet. Take advantage of this notion by selling your new items right away. You'll always be able to repurchase whatever items you desire later, once the prices for them have dwindled, with the money that you received by selling them in the first place when the hype was at an all-time high. That way you will have effectively lost nothing and earned gold. Of course, it will mean that you won't have that item right away, sure, but I'd say it's worth waiting to have all that extra gold. I guess it's a matter of personal preference. Much like all of the new zones that have been coming out in the past year and a bit, the treasure chests associated with Deadlands treasure maps have a chance to reward you with a lead for an ancient Daedric motif chapter. You can then scry and excavate this lead in order to actually receive the tradable motif page. Any Daedra roleplayers in the chat? I think it looks pretty nice, but awfully similar to a lot of the motifs that have been coming out for this past year. Nevertheless, I'm sure completionists and fashion enthusiasts will pay a pretty penny for these rare motifs. Remember, if you plan on selling maps from the Deadlands, price them adequately since they are valuable, or test your luck yourself and complete them for a chance at a lead for a pricey motif. Okay, I know for a fact that there are Imperial roleplayers in the chat. And lucky for you guys, a new motif is out that looks like the old Imperial style if it lost 50 pounds and got a facelift. These motifs have a chance to drop from the reward coffers upon completing and turning in daily quests in the Deadlands. There are 6 world boss dailies, 3 for each of the 2 world bosses, and then there are 6 of these other dailies that require you to gather items in a delve or part of the overland. Each of your characters can only receive one of each directly from the quest givers themselves. So be sure to share your dailies with others in your guild or in zone chat, and X up to receive other dailies from other people sharing their quests. I think it's fair to assume that these new motifs are on the same 20-hour cooldown, much like all of the daily reward motifs from the past 3 years or so. So if you're looking to maximize your drop chances, open these coffers until you receive a motif, and then wait 20 hours before you open any more to promote your chances at receiving one of these motifs every day. Don't entirely know what I'm on about? Check out this video. I go over motif cooldowns among other things in detail there. Furnishing plan farming, the poor man's loot crate opening. There are a handful of new Fargrave and Deadlands furnishing plans that have a chance to drop from containers and mobs across the Deadlands and Fargrave. I've been able to justify farming for these new furnishings over the past little while because they were just added, so they're worth a whole lot. Even blue plans have been selling for a couple $100K these past days, although of course this won't always be the case. But I've been getting a good financial return for my time spent farming here. A couple of us from the TTS server scouted out these new zones looking for ideal places to farm motifs when these zones first came out on the PTS. But unfortunately, it looks like these new zones took a chapter out of the Blackwood book, in the sense that there's a noticeable lack of prime furnishing plan farming locations. Sith D from our server managed to find a pretty solid location though. The Bearer's Rest in Fargrave has a fair amount of containers in it, especially on the second floor, but they can only be stolen from, not searched, which reduces your chances at getting a plan to drop, unfortunately. Another semi-decent location is in the Wretched Spire in the Deadlands. The containers there are searchable, which is preferred, but there aren't as many, and it's a bit of a run to get to. My preferred farming strategy is to quickly search all of the containers, then port to a home that can be previewed on the Crown Store, and then exit the home, since it will place my character exactly where she was before, and all of the containers will have reset themselves and they'll be ready to be looted once again. To be fair, this strategy works for me because my load screens are quite quick due to having an SSD, so you may want to consult an alternate reset strategy. If you steal a plan, make sure to head over to a fence at any Outlaw's Refuge to launder your items so that it becomes clean, and it can be listed on your guild traders. Be sure to not accidentally sell it to the fence instead, that would be tragic. And don't forget to loot containers passively as you play in these new zones. If we missed a great furnishing plan farming spot and you know of one, feel free to share it with us in the comments. Or don't. Fine, keep your secrets. Daedric portals occasionally spawn throughout the Deadlands. These function the same way that they did in Blackwood, where you can't find them just from looking at the map alone. You kinda have to just stumble upon them out in the wild. And they have a layout similar to that of a public dungeon, with a grand encounter at the end and a reward chest. These chests found at the end of the Daedric portals in the Deadlands have a chance to drop new Daedric structural furnishing plans, so if you haven't had a chance to complete one, it may be worthwhile to do so. With new prominent changes such as the hybridization of stats on sets, a handful of sets may experience more demand, seeing as more players now have a reason to use them. A lot of PvPers, particularly those that are Magplar and MagDK enjoyers, insist that Deadly Strikes is going to be a solid PvP set this patch, given the fact that it will now synergize with Magicka-based builds. If you're looking to gamble with your AP in an attempt to convert it into gold, you may want to consider making the trek to Bruma to then purchase some Deadly Strikes gear coffers for 12k AP apiece. Deadly Strikes is also not a bad PvE option for Magplars and other classes that are heavily dot focused. Gear in Impen and Divines, as well as daggers and Destro staves, should sell well. And that's it for this video. May RNGesus bless you all with good RNG so that you can all get valuable items to drop as you go out and partake in this new content. If you haven't already, you may want to consider joining the TTS Discord server. I found that every time a new patch drops, the server is a great place to talk shop about some great new ways to make gold, as well as how to price these new items that you may be finding as you partake in newer content. Thank you to the server boosters of our community Discord server, our officers and mods, and everyone else that has continued to support this channel. I'll see you guys on Discord or in-game if you're in my PCNA guild. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers!